Morning, everybody. I'm Kelly. I'm the Director of Community Partners with Taste Local Difference, and I'm here this morning with Lauren Blum of Bløm Meadworks in Ann Arbor.
Hey there.
How are you doing, Lauren?
I'm all right. Taking one day at a time. How are you?
Yeah, totally understandable given the current times. I'm doing okay as well, but I'm glad that we get to be together this morning and have a conversation. I know I'm very obsessed with your mead and your cider, so I'm excited to get to share what you do with everybody.
Thanks. Yeah.
Do you want to tell people a little bit about Bløm Meadworks?
Yes. Yeah. So my partner and I have a business here in downtown Ann Arbor called Bløm Meadworks. We make mead and cider. It's a little different than a typical meadery. We make session style meads. So they're carbonated, they're lower in alcohol than a traditional mead, and they're pretty dry. So they drink kind of like a cider. If folks aren't familiar with mead at all, it's a fermented honey beverage. Actually, it's technically a wine. So traditional mead is kind of this like thick, often sweet, almost like a dessert wine. Like you'd have maybe a little bit of it, sometimes kind of like almost syrupy a little bit. So we started playing with, mead recipes and also cider and reworking them a little bit to make them something that we liked. So we stuck with the honey, but changed the style a little bit so that it's really light and refreshing and it's not sweet. And we really liked working with both honey and apples to make mead and cider because we can source both of those from Michigan. Mm-hmm. We ended up kind of expanding on that and sourcing all of our ingredients from Michigan for lots of reasons, which we can talk about. But that was another factor in us choosing mead and cider as what we wanted to make.
Because you could have the flexibility to use those other ingredients.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, when you're making a mead or a cider, you have this primary fermentation ingredient, so honey or apples, but then you can add lots of other things too, just like a beer or something else that you're fermenting. So sometimes we're adding additional fruits, sometimes we're adding other spices, things like that. So yeah, we have a Michigan only rule for what we use.
That's one of my favorite things about you guys too. And so because of that, you have different flavors that rotate throughout the year, right?
Yeah, so we have a few staple flavors that we make year round. Mm-hmm. One of them is just our standard mead. Looks like that. So it just has honey, yeast, and water in it. It's just a little bit off dry, so it has a tiny bit of sweetness, a little tiny bit more honey flavor than some of the other ones that we make. That one we make year round. We also make a sizer, which is half mead, half cider, and a hopped, which we produce year round. So that's really dry, light, has Michigan hops in it. And then we had been making a gin botanical year round with Ann Arbor Distilling spent gin botanicals. And that's a little bit of an exception to the Michigan only rule for us. We get it from a local distillery, but they source their ingredients from a number of different places, some of them from Michigan, but some of them elsewhere. But it's a waste product for them after they're done distilling through those botanicals. So we made an exception so we could use it. But they're kind of changing up their distilling schedule a little bit. So I'm not sure if that one will be on. But the rest of the flavors, really depend on, and we have a few that we try to make seasonally each year, like rhubarb. We made the blueberry maple this last year, and we're hoping to make it again this year, but it really just depends on the growing season here in Michigan. The rhubarb's been pretty dependable, so this is our third year making it. We're starting our third year open, but we're really kind of at the mercy of Mother Nature.
Yeah, which, I mean, just like any other locally based business, it's truly sourcing ingredients locally. Do you feel like the customers and the people who are purchasing the mead like understand that fairly well, or has that been
They
a challenge?
do. I think folks get excited sometimes. I mean, certainly people are sad when certain flavors
Yeah.
go off tap because they're gone for the season. But I think it kind of makes it that much more exciting when they come back. It's a little bit, I think, why like folks in Michigan or the northern Midwest do kind of appreciate seasons, even though we grumble through the winter. It makes us
Yeah.
really excited for spring and summer and fall.
Mhm.
So even though we can't have those flavors on year round, I think folks get particularly excited when there's a new batch on when that season comes around again. We do also have some language on our can saying, this is an agricultural product. Like water content and fruit changes from year to year. The amount of sweetness changes from year to year. So even if we make the exact same recipe or we measure that sugar content and try to address that when we're fermenting, it's going to taste a little bit different. Like you're not going to buy two apples and have them taste you shouldn't be able to buy two apples and have them taste exactly the same.
Right.
And that follows through, that carries through all the way through fermentation. So honey changes drastically year over year and season to season,
Sure.
depending on when things bloom. If we have a late freeze and some of the blossoms fall off, it might mean they're pollinating different plants, and it's going to taste different, and it should taste different. So we try to celebrate that rather than find a way to create an identical product every time.
I love that because it's another opportunity to help people be really in tune with what's going on, right?
Yeah.
So one of the reasons why I love the CSA farm model, right? Because you like are intimately connected to the ebbs and the flows of that season.
Yeah.
And I didn't even think about the variability within the fruit and how that would vary your product. And that's just another opportunity for people to learn and develop that connection with what's going on around them. That's cool. Like that.
Yeah, we're so accustomed to, to be honest, I don't even know what a pineapple season is because I feel like you can buy a pineapple in the grocery store anytime if you really want to. And that's weird. Like, it's weird to not know when things grow or where. So it's kind of nice to, I don't know, there's something that's nice about, celebrating what's happening here, and it's like a small way to experience what farmers are experiencing every day when they're figuring out what's going on in their fields. Are their fields soaked? Can they get into them this year? Can they plant? What's going on?
Yeah so you get to like pass that lesson on in a unique and different way. That's really cool. So do you have a seasonal favorite that you produce? I know I have
the rhubarb is my seasonal favorite.
Okay.
I love things that are a little bit tart, a tiny bit sour. One of the things I really like about the rhubarb is that we often eat rhubarb. I think most folks tend to eat rhubarb in like pies or desserts where we're adding sugar or custard or other delicious things. And I love those too, but we don't often have a way to taste rhubarb on its own without that sweetness added in. And I like the mead because it isn't bracingly sour, but you can taste vanilla. To me, has like a little bit of this like minerally or tiny bit earthy flavor. And also like I get a little bit of kind of like vanilla-y warm notes from it too. So it's nice to be able to taste that in the mead. I mean, I don't really want to eat rhubarb stalks raw. I know some people do. But I like it better actually, I think, than like rhubarb in other sweet applications because I can taste more of it. So that's definitely my favorite. We did a pawpaw sour last year. I actually think we got some pawpaws and froze them for this year. So I think
cool.
we're gonna try and make another one. That one was like super weird and funky, but I loved it just because I think pawpaws are really weird and funky. And if folks haven't met a pawpaw before, it's this native fruit. We're kind of at the northernmost growing area for pawpaws, but they're kind of like mango-y, banana-y custard. Tastes like something that you wouldn't imagine growing in the Midwest. And we fermented it, and it kind of naturally fermented because there's so much yeast and bacteria on that fruit when we did. You picked it at Mark Boone's farm. And so it just got super weird. I kind of liked it. It was strange.
Did you guys just have that on tap, or did you, yeah. Okay.
We just had it on tap. So I can take it a little bit through the cellar and kind of show what that looks like. But you know, some batches we try to make large enough so that we have some on tap, and we can also can some. Right now, I think we have maybe six different meads and ciders and cans. I think we're probably going to start trying to can a little bit more, just because to-go sales are our only option right now.
Sure.
We do have growlers and howlers too, but cans are easier for some folks. But then some batches we make really small, and they're only intended to be on tap. So for right now, that would mean just, you know, growler and howler sales. But you know, it would be really hard for us to go hand pick enough pawpaws to do a huge batch. Yeah. But we don't want to skip over those ingredients just because we can't get a ton of them. I think that's part of what makes the pawpaw fruit really interesting, is that it's not really commercially viable. Like, it's too delicate. It bruises really easily. It's ripe for about a day. It's kind of like an avocado in that way. So it would be really hard to get a ton of it, but I still want to play with it. I mean,
for sure. Well, and I think that's kind of fun too about your business, is that, you mean, you have these staple products that you can get all the time, but there are special treats if you like come into the tap room or grab a howler or growler to go, that you can taste like these unique different flavors of those smaller batches.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to try the pawpaw because I don't think I got a chance to taste it last year. So
we'll announce when it's on.
Got me interested.
It's cool. It's yeah, it's unlike anything I've ever tasted before.
Yeah. Well,
I think it's also worth noting, I kind of didn't cover this, but all of the meads and ciders are naturally gluten-free. So, you know, we're just starting with apples or honey and water, and then adding in other fruits and spices. So my partner, Matt, owned a brewery in Chicago and was a head brewer, and several years in found out that he had a gluten allergy. And so he couldn't drink beer anymore. So that was kind of like the main impetus in us pursuing a new direction. He really wanted to stay in fermentation, and I had been working in local food sourcing and local food advocacy. So this was kind of the intersection of what we both wanted to be doing. So he still wanted to be playing around in the cellar and trying new recipes, but ideally something that he could drink after he made it, because that's kind of nice. And I really wanted to be working, you know, with local farmers and kind of highlighting our local food shed. And this was kind of the answer to that. So everything is safe for folks who have gluten allergies, sensitivities, folks who have celiac.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that's another one of the reasons why I appreciate it so much, because I don't eat or drink gluten things, and to have a product that's not sickly sweet and heavy, that it's just like easy drinking, great flavors, and really enjoyable. I definitely appreciate that. And the fact that you're sourcing from all across Michigan, which that image behind you, right, is like all the places that's super cool.
Yeah, we had a group of students at the university called Live in Color. They paint murals to try and brighten up some kind of industrial areas of the university, but they've now painted a few areas in town. The front of Rue's Roast downtown, they painted that also. So yeah, we had them come up with this mural, and then we put tags for the farms that we source from, so we could, you know, just find another way to visually call out the folks who are doing the really hard work.
Yeah, that's super cool. So if folks are folks, when they're picking up, are they coming in to that area, or they're just grabbing stuff from the front? Yeah,
just grabbing stuff. So right now we have curbside and local delivery, which that was a permit we needed to get from the state, because we're technically a winery. So we can do local delivery, which we do on Wednesdays and Saturdays. And we also have curbside, which is Wednesday through Saturday. And you can order online anytime. You can place an order if we're open, or a pre-order for the next time that we're open. Or you can call in during any of the hours that we are open. Right now, it looks like if you're coming to do curbside, we have a sanitized table and we set it out, and then you come pick it up after we go inside. For delivery, we set it on the porch, and we just ask you to either have your ID out or be prepared to show it up to your door when we show up, so we can see it through the door or window. I think probably the next phase for us, we're going to be moving really incrementally toward a reopening, because I don't feel like it's safe or responsible right now in this area to be doing any kind of reopen in our indoor space. So I think kind of the next increment will look like, rolling up our garage door, having a table there so people can take things to go. So you don't have to order ahead. You can just walk up, and we'll have, a contactless way to take things with you. And then probably the phase after that will be some kind of spaced out tables on our patio, so folks can order, sit for a little while, and drink here. But even that feels a little ways off yet.
Yeah, it's constantly an evolving situation that you just kind of have to watch and make choices in real time. So
yeah, it's a lot of adapting.
Yeah. Well, it seems like you found some good ways to adapt and shift a little bit.
We're trying. I think we're just thinking about what we're capable of and what we can offer, and what folks seem to be enjoying, what's bringing them a little bit of joy right now, and combining that with what we feel like we feel really confident is safe. So that's number one. For
sure. Yeah. And you don't want to progress too fast.
Yeah.
At that point where you don't feel comfortable with what you're doing. So it makes sense to kind of have a stepwise approach to things, for sure.
We have been offering groceries as well. We heard from a lot of customers that it would be helpful to pick up a few things while they pick up their meat and cider. So we have bread and eggs and a few different cuts of pork, some bacon, sausages, some cured meats, coffee, things like that. All of those are from Michigan producers and farmers. Most of them are from significantly more locally than that. So most of them are from the Ann Arbor area, but the pork, for example, is from Jake's Country Meats on the west side of the state.
Yep. Yeah. And folks can go online when they're doing their curbside pickup order and order one of those grocery boxes too, right?
Yep, it's actually not a box, it's just a la carte. So you can go on to the online ordering page, and just as you choose any of the meads or ciders you want to add, there's also a grocery section where you can add a loaf of bread or a dozen eggs. Yeah, that's kind of nice. Yeah. More of a one-stop shop then. Yeah, a little bit. It also, it sounded like folks wanted that or needed that. And we also, had been in a lot of conversations with farmers. I sit on the board of Slow Food, and we'd had a lot of conversations with farmers as well, that they'd lost so many of their opportunities to get in front of customers when the markets were closed. And then also so many wholesale accounts are closed right now because restaurants are operating at a reduced capacity. So if folks are, interested in finding groceries, and it's another way, even if it's small, for producers to connect with them. Yeah, I think that's been one of my favorite things to see during this time, is so many places are doing that, what you guys are doing, collaborating with other local businesses to join forces to promote each other and get in front of more people and provide those other sales opportunities. And I think that's great. And I'm keeping my fingers crossed that sense of community collaboration stays moving forward. It was already strong in the local food world, and I feel like this time is bringing people together in a new way in that space. it's been really inspiring to see. I mean, I think one of the reasons that we really wanted to be downtown, there were lots of reasons. One, we serve alcohol, so we wanted folks to be able to bike or walk or take the bus. And we also just felt like as a meadery, we probably needed to be in an area where there was a lot of foot traffic, because not everybody knows what mead is and might not seek it out. But there's just such an inspiring group of businesses, and really throughout the Huron Valley area, but folks are just doing really cool things. And we kind of came in with this hope that people would be open to collaborating. And, we kind of built our tap room out in a way that we could do lots of community events. We did like bike repair workshops. We have had yoga every week, concerts on Sunday nights from student groups, lots of things like that. But just because you come in with that intent doesn't mean that it'll happen. But it did. Everybody was so open to working together, and it just kind of came to fruition. It's been great.
Yeah, it makes me really happy to hear that you've had that experience.
Yeah.
And that continues through despite the social distancing it is.
I don't know what that all will look like in the future. It's a little sad to think about, because that's, I think, a big component of the joy in our space. It's certainly not all of it, but it was really nice to be able to offer a kind of brick and mortar space for community groups who are meeting, and we'll just find a new way to do that.
Yeah. Well, I noticed that you were we were doing some virtual things with like the bike group and that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's some creative ways to still be sort of connected and engaging in those groups.
Yep. We're trying to find cool ways. This is the 3rd annual Bløm 100. So for the first 2 years, cyclists would start here, and then they could ride either 100 miles or 100K, and they would ride up past the orchard that we planted a few years ago.
Oh, yeah, cool.
We planted an orchard with I think 120 cider apple trees, apples that are terrible for eating, but particularly good for making cider. They're kind of bitter and tart and all kinds of things. So it started here, went up through the orchard, and then came back down here. So this year it's a solo ride, and there's a 50K route also. So if anybody out there is looking for a cycling challenge, there's a little bit of single track, there's some gravel, some roads, couple parks in there, but you can stop here afterwards and pick up a Bløm Ride sticker. If you ride all 3, you get an Ann Arbor Velo Club hat. Cool. All kinds of cool stuff. So yeah, there's some really cool stuff happening. Obviously less in person or none in person, but still some cool stuff. Yeah.
That's exciting. And do folks find out about that through the website? Is it on your website?
I actually don't think we have. We took down the events page to make room for curbside and delivery information, but it's on Facebook, and we had some information linked to it on our Instagram page also. Yeah, if you just Google Bløm Solo Ride, it should pop up.
Cool. So a few minutes ago, you mentioned the production space. And I think folks would be really excited to see that space. Can we take a peek?
A little walk,
Yeah. Oh, now we can see that mural really good. It's fun.
You also, our space looks totally different. We've moved a lot of the tables and chairs out of the way. We now live in a land of boxes and packaging materials, as we're getting curbside and delivery orders ready to go. And also, I guess I'll share this, but in the fall, there was a PBS Tastemakers episode that came and shot here, which we'll be sharing out soon and sharing some information about. But it's been airing around the country, and we can kind of tell where it's airing, because all of a sudden we'll get a bunch of shipping orders from Texas, and then we'll get a bunch of shipping orders from DC, and it's like, oh, it must have just played there. So
that's kind of cool.
Yeah, we can kind of, we have this heat map of where it's played. So we're in the tap room right now. This is kind of like the bar, back bar, where we're normally operating and serving drinks. So we have kind of our taps there. Usually lots of seating here, but not right now.
That's okay. You need packing space.
Yeah, we have plenty of room for packing. We got some merch. That's our big glass roll-up door that lately we've been rolling up and just kind of like putting that table in front of to do curbside pickup since it's been so nice out. So this is the area where we normally do lots of community events. Part of the tap room also connects to our cellar area. We've moved all the tables and chairs out of the way because we've been doing a lot of canning with so much more to-go sales. Usually we can a little bit, and then I have a lot here on draft. But we've been doing more packaging just because that's how folks are buying right now, understandably.
And you're distributing those cans still to like area retailers, right?
Yep, they're still available in grocery stores, liquor stores, wine stores. Yeah, it's this spring we transitioned from self-distribution to working with a distributor, M4, and they work statewide. So it's available in grocery stores around Michigan. There's a map on our site. I think it's drinkbloom.com/find us maybe. And it has a map of everywhere we're at, or at least, it's within the last
most of the places. Yeah.
Yep. So this is kind of where the magic happens. This is our cellar. Matt was cleaning kegs yesterday, so normally this is like a big open space, but it's a little
might be a little disappointed in us taking a peek right now.
Don't tell him. It's a little filled up right now. So these are 500-gallon fermenters that we use. Again, so we make that session style mead. It's carbonated, it's dry, it's lower in alcohol. So our fermentation process looks a lot more similar to a beer than a wine, even though it's categorized as a wine. So these are made by a beer tank company, but we had them do a couple adaptations to make them a little bit better for mead and cider. So I don't know if you can see that, but oftentimes if you're at a brewery, if you see a fermenter, it has this kind of like conical shaped bottom so that you can harvest yeast off the bottom and pitch it again in another batch. We don't do that. One, we don't have a boil process, so we don't have a way to guarantee that yeast is sanitized in the way that you would with beer. And so we don't want to use it in another batch. But also fermenting mead in particular is a little bit harder on the yeast, more exhausting for the yeast than it would be for beer. So we start with a new batch of yeast every time. But anyway, the flat bottom also means that there's more surface area and exposure to fruit that we put in there. So we're adding blueberries or pawpaws or black currants, whatever it is, and it's something where we add the skins in also for tannins or for color. That mead and cider has more exposure to the fruit sitting on the bottom.
Makes sense.
So for a mead, for example, Matt's, we're adding honey to the tank and we're mixing it with hot water. We try to keep the water temperature as low as we can while still getting that honey into solution. We don't want to use a high temperature because we don't want to drive off the aromatics or some of the kind of valuable compounds in the honey. So I think it's usually coming in at about 118 or so Fahrenheit.
Okay.
So we're mixing that in the tank, and then we're pitching the yeast. Fermentation begins. That yeast is eating the sugar from the honey, producing carbon dioxide and alcohol. And then if we're adding something else, for a blueberry maple, for example, we press the blueberries in a press, which I can maybe show, and add those toward the beginning of the fermentation because they have decently high sugar content. Add that in, it ferments with the honey, and then after fermentation, if we're going to do any back sweetening, which again, if we're doing that, it's really small just to give it like a tiny bit of brightness. For the blueberry maple, we use maple, sometimes use honey. For our ciders, we're using more apple juice or pressed apples to back sweeten a little bit. So that's kind of the process. And then afterwards, we're filtering, we're doing some testing, we're filtering, carbonating the packaging.
And you guys bring in a mobile canning?
Yeah, we bring in a mobile canning line. So they kind of set up, we move everything out of this corridor, and they set up in here. So there's a process where we're kind of getting the cans off of the pallets. They go through a spin rinse to rinse them out. They get purged with CO2 to make sure there's no oxygen in the can. And then there's a hose connected directly to those tanks. It pushes in the meter cider, and then lid, seam. And now the company has a labeler, so the labels go on. I know, it's a really big deal. Otherwise we were putting them all on individually.
That's crazy.
So yeah, that's been a really exciting change.
That's huge. It probably saves you so much time.
It saves us a lot of time. I'll go through a little bit. So we have some honey over here. We get it in 55-gallon drums, sometimes in buckets. We purchase our honey from 3 beekeepers in Michigan. One of them's on the east side of the state, kind of near St. Clair Shores. One of them's near Midland, and then the third is in Newaygo County on the west side of the state. So 3 kind of small to medium-sized commercial beekeepers. We used to use 5-gallon buckets. We switched to the drums. One, it's just a little bit easier to pump into the fermenters, but also there's less waste. Our beekeepers could reuse the bottom of the bucket, but not the lids once they've been pressed on. And with a drum, they can reuse the whole thing.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. We can go in the walk-in cooler for just a second. So just kind of stacks of cans back there.
The beautiful ribbons.
And then we have some serving tanks.
Okay.
And kegs. That's what drives the tap room. So that's what all of the taps are connected to. So
Cool.
we have some of our groceries that we're offering, some of the dried goods.
Chocolate.
We got some chocolate from Mindo, coffee from Vertex. We have some gluten-free crackers from Tasty Bakery, honey from Renegade Acres, and also from Great Lakes Bee Company, which is one of our beekeepers. Yeah.
Nice mix of things.
Yeah. So that's kind of the space.
Thanks for the tour.
Yeah, totally.
Like, I'm sad I can't be there.
I know.
But it's nice to get to.
We're sad too.
And
yeah.
With you. That's great. Well, thanks, Lauren, for spending time with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's nice to have a conversation,
I know.
even if not in person.
I know. I appreciate these too. I think that's been my favorite part of doing these. It's just like human interaction, get to have a conversation and learn more about your business. There's that I didn't know that you shared. So thanks.
Yeah, I think sometimes when we do have conversations right now, we're all so hungry, to talk to other people and learn more. And I feel like I've had some really great conversations with folks, because normally in the day-to-day, everybody's moving so quickly, and time to talk doesn't feel so much like a luxury. So
yeah, I think that's totally true. And that's something that I hope, again, we were talking earlier about things that we hope that on through this time, that we've reconnected to the value of a conversation.
Yeah, definitely.
Slowing down and taking that time to connect.
Yep.
So I'm glad that we can share this space together to have that kind of connection and conversation.
I think so too. Thanks for making the space.
Of course, always. Well, I hope you have a good rest of the day, and we'll hopefully be talking again soon.
Sounds good.
All right. Bye, Lauren.
Bye.